98% of the folks in the forefront of that movement had Reverend in front of their name before they had PhD. And if we keep ignoring the black church, the black church was my daddy. The black church was where I went to school. The black church was my camp. It was my Christmas. That was my Santa Claus. And then we sit around here now talking about the old days. The old days is gone. And I sit today and listen to these new stats coming out. Well, 85% of all children that drown in America today is African American. And 90% of those that drown, their mother and father can't swim. Why? Because when I grew up, you couldn't go to the white YMCA where they had a swimming pool. You couldn't go to the city swimming pool. Okay? But when you make a whole race of people invisible, I'll wear green, blue, chartreuse, and order for you to laugh at me, you have to see me. And so I came here to the church and became visible. I got me a Cadillac, man, but I park it 6 blocks from work, because if white folks see it, I think I'm going to get fired. But I could bring it to church. I couldn't wear my new clothes to work. I couldn't share with them white folk that my daughter and my son is at Princeton. That's true. But I could come to church, and the preacher tell all y'all, he's graduated. See, back them days, if you died, you went from where you died to the undertaker. Okay? And if it wasn't for the black church, I couldn't read it in the white paper that Mrs. Sulu is sick in Chicago and she passed. So the New York Times, my church bulletin was my New York Times. Lord have mercy. It told me who had been drafted. Who had made the honor roll? Who had finished college? It didn't tell me who was in jail. I ain't got no part in that damn bulletin to tell me so-and-so was murdered at a crap game. That church bulletin, that bulletin that I go and look at. And that's why I wanted to learn how to read so I could see what's happening in the community on Sunday.
Man was admonished not to covet his neighbor's wife. Nothing was said about coveting a neighbor's wealth. Throughout recorded history, God's words and teachings have been used and even distorted to teach that it is wrong to want and have wealth and power. The most often cited scripture was Matthew 19:24 that said, "It is easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God." That scripture is not anti-wealth. The scripture challenges those who do not acquire wealth and power to use it to help those who do not have it. Therefore, it is wealth inequalities and not wealth itself that the scriptures oppose. In accord with scriptural admonishments, the Powernomics national plan is about acquiring wealth and power, then using it to improve the lives of people who have been long denied the joys of a decent quality of life. This chapter calls for a new and expanded role for those of Black America's 65,000 churches that choose the Powernomics vision. Just as established religions played a central role in institutionalizing Black slavery, modern organized religion can be instrumental in carrying out biblical instructions and correcting the wealth and power inequalities between the races. The Black church community is the only Black institution that successfully survived the centuries of slavery, Jim Crow, semi-slavery, and government-directed benign neglect. Within that survival record, they are the most qualified institution to bring wealth and prosperity to an impoverished Black race. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. Happy Monday. I am Joseph Ward, and we are actually finishing the last chapter of our reading and review of Dr. Claude Anderson's Powernomics, the National Plan to Empower Black America. This is Chapter 8, a new and expanded role for churches. As you can see in the clip, it's Dick Gregory talking about the role that the church used to play in the Black community, because that's the tone that we're setting for this video. Not only are we talking about the role that the church used to play, we're looking at the current state of the church and what the church could be. And it's all in this book. And it's all what Dr. Claude Anderson was talking about, being able to use the institution of the Black churches to help to empower our communities, because the churches are already a staple within our communities, right? So there was a time, if you don't know, because there are people who may not be old enough to know. I know my audience, most of you are old enough to know. But for those who may not be old enough to know, there was a time where the Black church was the hub, was the central place of the Black community. The Black church played, like Dick Gregory was saying, the Black church played various vital roles in maintaining and helping to further the Black community at one point. Religion, and we're going to talk about how religion, how Black people in America specifically became Christian, and how, you know, we out Christian everybody else. But there are people who were Christians and who read the Bible, but the message that they got wasn't a message of being docile. It wasn't a message of being a good slave. It wasn't a message of getting along with your master and going along with your master. It was a message of freedom. It was a message of liberation. It was a message of revolt. It was a message of humanity. It was a message of standing up and reclaiming your rights as human beings and fighting back against your oppressors. A la Nat Turner, right? And so the overall tone of this is, how can we better our churches? Or is the church even still vital? Because remember, this book was written in 2001. It's 2023. So are the Black churches too far gone to where they can't, we can't reestablish a connection, the community can't reestablish a connection with the church, and the church once again become a vital institution within our community? Or are the churches too gone, as well as the community itself too far gone, to where we can't even use the church as any means of any type of institution to better our position? Where are we? Where are we in 2023? Are we too far gone? Is it too many of us that's too far gone? Is it enough of us that are in a good enough position to be able to reclaim something for ourselves? So these are things that we are going to explore while we're going through this chapter 8. So picking back up, page 224, the second paragraph under Black churches, our oldest economic institution. For centuries, both ministers and their churches performed an important social function. They were always visible manifestations of Black consciousness, values, and spirituality, the one area in which Black people have had our greatest degree of freedom. Despite legalized slavery and Jim Crow semi-slavery, Black churches instilled Black family values and a community code of conduct. That is important, the code of conduct. The code of conduct guided our emotionalism and spiritual upliftment, cultivated and contained our culture, and refined and passed down our musical and artistic talents. Within the community itself, our churches have been very productive. They have trained our civic and political leaders, fought for justice, freedom, as well as developed our first mutual aid societies, insurance companies, newspapers, and numerous other businesses. With a present annual revenue flow of approximately $50 billion, and remember this was 2001, Black churches remain Black America's largest and oldest mechanism for aggregating wealth and creating businesses. But a 1983 survey of more than 1,800 Black clergymen found that only about half supported use of the church to achieve Black political and social change, right? So that, I read that because that is important. It is because Dr. Anderson is once again illustrating what I just said about the role that the Black church played and how we were able to use the church to build things for ourselves and create things for ourselves. But Remember, this was also at a time where we were forced to be around ourselves. Now, after integration, we can be where we want to be, and we can try to assimilate and integrate into white culture, into white societies. We have an abundance of black reverends, pastors, preachers, bishops, whatever you want to call them, black male and female leaders in churches who, instead of having a black agenda, they have a Christian agenda. And so, once again, we find a case of people being everything before being black. But from what I've seen in my experience, a lot of these black church leaders, they choose the religion over blackness. They choose the politics over blackness because it lines their pockets and it keeps them in a position of power, authority, and relevance. And they have no interest in making sure the community as a whole is improved. They're blindly leading people to their own doom. Talk about heaven and hell. We're living in hell right now because this is the hell we created for ourselves. So, page 225, the original role of the black churches. Black churches were one of the first tools slave masters used to socially engineer black people. Black churches were one of the first tools slave masters used to socially engineer black people. A slave's exposure to organized religion in this country was limited to accompanying their slave masters to Sunday morning services as an attendant or driver. This is key. While colonial laws of 1672 discouraged slaveholders from baptizing black slaves, Christianity was used to benefit the white masters. In general, slave masters hoped Christianity would encourage slaves to be Christ-like, render them submissive and obedient, justify black bondage, and instill internal control over the hearts and minds of black slaves. These internal controls were accompanied by self-serving interpretations of the Bible, alleging the blacks were a cursed people. Many blacks became so convinced that the world was so full of sin and sorrow that the sooner they were dead, the better off they would be. From their inception in the early 1800s, they had the responsibility to focus the aspirations of the black people on the next life. The scriptures were used to promote black inferiority and justify slavery. Once the white power elite selected or approved a black person to administer to the black masses, they admonished ministers to teach that one, when the Holy Bible referred to the slave master, it was referring to the black race and the white slave master here on earth. Two, blacks were supposed to be hardworking, trustworthy, obedient, and humble. And three, they were to accept their lot in life, postpone worldly pleasures, and look forward to their pie in the sky after death. Essentially, black churches and black ministers were approved to induce blacks into colluding in their own exploitation of subordination. So, how did black people in America become such Christians? Because if we look at it historically, Christianity had not reached West Africa. If most of the enslaved people throughout the Americas came from West Africa, they either practiced their own cultural, spiritual systems, or they practiced Islam. Right? Those were the two dominant things that they would have practiced. So Christianity was given to slaves when it came to the West, given to them to keep them subservient and to actually make them slaves. Your religion, the God that you serve, said that you are to serve your slave master and be obedient. So it's part of the psychological programming. It's what Dr. Anderson gets into, what we all call the Willie Lynchism, but it's part of the psychological programming. You were destined to be a slave. Your God says you're supposed to be a slave, so you're supposed to be the best slave that you can be. Don't question God, don't question your master. Do your duty. Work hard, work till you die, and once you die, your reward is on the other side. you know, and that's how you maintain a system of white supremacy. That's how you create docile people and then eventually create niggas to maintain a system of white supremacy. Now, on the positive side, page 226, the use of biblical scriptures to control and render black people passive, pliable, and accepting has never worked with all the blacks, right? Mentioned Nat Turner earlier. Instead of using the Bible to teach blacks to be all forgiving, long suffering, with a turn the other cheek attitude, some independent black ministers use the scriptures to embolden blacks to oppose and escape slavery. They feign compliance with social policies and instead preached coded sermons and gave hope to black slaves. They helped the black masses by fashioning a different sense of reality within the Christian religion and reaching them to identify with the plight of the Jews of the Bible and providing resources to escape slavery. Following the Civil War, many black ministers, especially those in the African Methodist Episcopal churches, aggressively asserted their spiritual independence. In the mid-1860s, over 100 ex-slaves walked into St. Paul's AME Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, and demanded that the church help the 5 million newly freed slaves who were poor, hungry, ignorant, homeless, and defenseless. The black churches responded to this and similar demands across the South and provided food and clothing. Within a decade, they used the churches to start banks, newspapers, benevolent societies, insurance companies, burial societies, and other black businesses. Black churches eventually became the repositories of black culture, music, wealth, leadership. Most importantly, black ministers began to use their churches as training grounds for community and business leaders. So that made me think about, I used to think that black people should just throw Christianity away altogether. Now, I'm not totally still. I'm not against that. I still believe in that in a bit. But I've also come to the reality to understand that black people will not give up Christianity. So I can want black people to throw it away all I want, but in reality, black people would not give up Christianity. But as we just read, how can we use Christianity to empower ourselves? How can we use the religion that predominates our culture and our people to empower ourselves, to free ourselves, to look at ourselves as more than just slaves and laborers, but look at ourselves as empowered people, and to better our position in life, to better our lot in life, to really create foundational codes for ourselves and follow those codes and use those codes to empower ourselves. We're not going to get rid of the religions, but how can they become instruments of empowerment for more than just a couple of instances as well? Now, once again though, are we too far gone to even be able to salvage anything from religion or from our community that can help us empower ourselves? I think that's a question that needs to be asked and answered, but it needs to be pondered on as well. The story, excuse me, the story of Samson and Delilah is not just a morality story of a man's betrayal of a woman or about Samson being punished for giving into the weakness of the flesh. It was the story of a man who God brought into the world with unique strengths and powers. As an instrument of God, Samson loved and championed the causes of his people. But Samson was not a priest or a man of the cloth. He never saw himself as being perfect. He gambled, drank wine, chased women, and committed violent acts. Samson was a Danite, commissioned to provoke the Philistines, and when necessary to stand up to them. He was not sent to earth to get along with the enemies of his people. The story of Samson is about unconventional, out-of-the-box thinking. The lesson in the story of Samson is that even when blind and rendered committed to fighting, even when blind, he remained committed to fighting his people's enemies, regardless of personal sacrifices he had to make. Today, as in Samson's time, the system that is opposing black people stands upon two pillars. One, a structural economic and political inequality between the races. And two, the learned inappropriate behavior patterns of Black people. The lesson in the story of Samson is more about commitment than it's about betrayal. Commitment to the cause. But we must first understand the cause to become committed to the cause. Those of us who say we understand and understand the cause, we have to commit ourselves to uplifting and empowering our people in any way we can. Do not try to do what other people are doing. Do what you can do best. Samson, like he said, Samson was not a preacher. That was a great example. Samson was not a preacher or a man of the cloth. Samson probably morally would be classified as a bad person morally. But in the story, Samson was chosen by God to use his powers, use his skills, use his strengths, use his talents to fight his enemies. So that's an analogy for us, right? What talents, what skills, what abilities do you have as an individual that you can use and you can connect with other people to fight your enemies, to overthrow your oppressors, to better your situation? In this case, he's talking about the churches. So, but the churches have to empower themselves and the communities have to empower themselves and have to come together, work together. Because the way Black America is structured, the church is central to what we do. The church is central to us being successful, and the church is central to us failing. Religious or spiritual institutions are connected to Black societies. And the state of our spiritual and or religious institutions mirror the state of the community because the same people run both. The hour is late, 2:27 at the bottom of the page. A great number of social factors, including the breakdown of the family, deterioration of Black communities, lack of moral standards, increased crime and integration, negatively impact Black churches. Integration is one of the most detrimental. Why? Because to a large degree, integration triggered many of the current social pathologies that are crippling Black communities. Churches also had to respond to changing neighborhoods. Some churches welcomed the newcomers and abandoned their own Blackness. Others welcomed the newcomers into the Blackness of their church and maintained their cultural heritage and orientation. Some white ministers moved into Black neighborhoods and set up churches with Black members. The integration process has already compromised away our music, colleges, businesses, sports teams, and communities. By compromising away our Blackness, whether it is inside or outside the church, we lose our common past and a common future aspiration. We become a people who are blind to a reality. So he also goes on to say, a couple of years ago, while speaking at a community forum in a local high school auditorium in Ohio, a member of the planning committee advised me that a Black minister of one of the city's largest Black churches would not be attending the program. He anticipated that the program would focus on Black issues and Black rights, and as a minister, his concern was human rights, not Black rights. It seems that by focusing on human rights rather than Black rights, the minister implied that Blacks are less than human. Ironically, the first time the phrase human rights was made a public issue was in the 1850s in response to Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was later that human rights, like the concepts of minority and race, was expanded and watered down to include nearly everybody but Black people. Unfortunately, this manner is not unique. There are hundreds of Black ministers who have similar attitudes and avoid Black rights and Black people. Though the racial inequalities created by slavery and Jim Crow segregation continue to exist, apparently, many ministers feel some obligation to protect white society's feelings by avoiding racial matters. Some do not. There are two rational exceptions. On the West Coast, Dr. Frederick Casey Price, pastor of Crenshaw Christian Center in Los Angeles, delivered a phenomenal year-long series of lectures on race, religion, and racism, which he later published as a book by the same name. Dr. Prince approached the problems of race in the church with scholarship, integrity, and in an effort to educate. He chastised various religions on their institutionalized racism. On the East Coast in Washington, D.C., Dr. Earl Trent, the pastor of Florida Avenue Baptist Church, was equally committed. Dr. Trent teaches about the role of Blacks in the Bible, but he also focuses on economic development within the church. He works to save his people and his community. The church is buying property and building Black-owned businesses, but many Black ministers are afraid to be Black. They are often dependent upon non-Blacks for supplemental incomes, political appointments, and government gains to protect their relationship with the majority of society. They avoid anything that is identifiably Black and willingly sell out their people, whether for extra income or special recognition from whites or simply out of ignorance. Whatever the reason, the harm to Blacks cannot be erased. A case in point is a business alliance formed by 5 of the nation's largest Black churches in the late 1900s, called the Revelation Corporation of America. According to reports, a white businessman from Memphis helped the churches create the alliance. Predominantly white-owned businesses would sell their products to Black Americans at a discount through these churches. Both the white-owned businesses as well as the Black churches as well as the Black man who helped establish the alliance, stood to take substantial profits. Black ministers earned about 12% commission from steering consumer dollars out of the communities and into the coffers of the whites and other non-Black businesses. The economic model is not in the self-interest of Blacks. It directed dollars away from Black businesses and to white and Korean-owned businesses. The alliance followed the historical pattern of using Black consumer dollars to make whites and others wealthy, dropping a few crumbs to Blacks along the way. Alliances of this type allowed whites and Korean businesses to take over the Black funeral home industry, just as they engineered the recent takeover of the Black haircut industry and Black music industry. It is inappropriate for Black churches and Black ministers to allow themselves to be used as hunt dogs by those who want to exploit Black consumers. Now, that is important. That's why we should not follow people. We should follow code. When you follow people, you can be led astray. Can people be leaders? Yes, but leaders also have to follow code. And leaders have to be able to. The code allows the leaders to be held accountable. And if the leader is leading people astray, or if the leader itself or themselves are only uplifting themselves, and if they're only about themselves, and if they're being greedy, and if they're working with our enemies to align their pockets, there should be punishment in place. There should be something in place to deter the behavior. We have too many ministers, too many church leaders who are out of line, out of pocket. We talk about it here on this channel all the time. We see it here in Tallahassee all the time. There are a handful of ministers in this city who we can actually trust. It's about money. It's about political gain. It's about visibility. Now it's about attention and influence. I want the biggest church. I want the mega church. I want the money. I want the dollars. I want the power. While the community is left behind. It's not about the community anymore. Even the community has turned its back on itself. So you have the community who doesn't give a damn about itself, and the church and the leaders of the church who don't give a damn about the community. It's a lose-lose situation. At some point, somebody got to wake up and smell the coffee and realize we are all losing. We're all losing. Whether you're getting your crumbs off the table or not, we're all losing. All pets get put down at some time. Remember that. All pets get put down at some time. We can either continue the bullshit that we're doing, or we can get it together. But that's why I asked the question, are we too far gone? Is the community too far gone? Is the church too far gone? It seems like morality doesn't exist anymore. It seems like values, morals and values that actually uplift and empower people, they don't exist anymore. Black culture is the most ratchet things we can do, the most criminal things we can do. That is now considered black culture. We have an uphill battle. We can't lie about it. We have an uphill battle. But we have to recognize the problems as well. So, what should black churches do? Dr. Anderson says, first, they should begin espousing a new black spirituality that promotes community building, both in terms of physical structures and in the sense of peoplehood. As active community builders, black churches can influence nearly every aspect of black life. They can reach out and apply Powernomics principles to rebuild the physical communities, local economics, public and private school systems, and most importantly, give black people an expanded base for their spirituality. The distinction between blacks as religious versus blacks as spiritual is important. Black people can be spiritual even without belonging to a particular church. Those who are spiritual may not regularly attend a church, but do believe in the existence of God and feel religion is important in their lives. Many would be attracted to church affiliation by religious institutions that are reformed and more committed to the black community. Goddamn right. The challenge for black churches is to prepare black people to compete and prosper here on earth. Not all black churches will be able to accept this challenge. Since wealth and power follow the numbers, Black America needs its churches to expand their philosophical and program boundaries to include as many Black people as possible, whether members or not. Churches that choose to accept the challenge will retain their religious leadership, but expand it to include civic activities and challenge America's structural inequalities. The days of the way we used to go to church and the influence the church used to have is over. We need to be honest. It's over. I don't even attend church. I never once in my life wanted to attend a church. I never wanted to go to church. Never saw the reason for going to church. I've said this before, it always felt fake to me. Never nothing practical. Not saying this is 100% of the churches that exist, but I'm talking about from my experience of the churches that I've attended in my life. It's all about making you feel good and having that good word, right? So, and we all know that Black men are no longer going to churches because churches are pandering to Black women and, excusing bad behaviors and driving them. So Black churches have, in effect, helped to drive a wedge between Black men and Black women. So the churches have to be restructured, and the communities have to be restructured. See, I'm not going to put it all in the church because it's the community who run the churches. But the churches have to be restructured. The communities have to be restructured. So Dr. Anderson is giving principles that can be used to restructure the churches. There are 10 principles to offer guidance to Black churches committed to expanding their traditional role and encouraging Black Americans towards self-sufficiency based on competitive self-interest. Remember, we are competing with all other groups. We're competing with whites, everybody who's classified as white. We're competing with everybody who's classified as Hispanic. We're competing with everybody who's classified as Asian. We're competing with all these groups and any other groups that classify themselves outside of that don't classify themselves as Black. We're competing with all these groups. Get the fantasy of the world out of your head. In reality, whether outside of Africa or inside of Africa, conquest has always been the way of humanity. And religion has been used as a tool of conquest outside of Africa and inside of Africa by Africans and used by Europeans and other groups, Asians and other groups on Africans. Like I keep telling people, in order for an African empire to expand, somebody had to lose the fight. One African empire didn't go to the next African empire and say, excuse me, my brother, and excuse me, my brothers and sisters, do you mind if we take your land? Do you mind if we expand our empire onto your land and you just let us do it? And they said, sure, you can just expand yourself on our lines and just do that. No, they fought. They went to war. Somebody won, somebody lost. Kingdoms were able to expand and become empires. We read about them, but we romanticize them. Conquest has always been the nature of humans. We're in this position because we lost the fight against the Europeans. We lost the wars against them. They came to colonize and to capture and to create chattel slavery, and we lost. In order to regain ourselves, we have to put ourselves in position to fight back. How did the Europeans get the Americas? They killed off the Indians, the Native Americans. How did the Native Americans expand their territories? They fought each other. They went to war with each other. Everybody went to war with each other. This is all about conquest. Let's get that reality in our heads right now before we move any further. This is all about conquest, whether they look like you or not. We have this view of white supremacy and the transatlantic slave trade and all the effects that it has had on us because it affected us negatively. Now, with that understanding, it is for us to improve ourselves and stop looking at this through emotional lens and look at this through a historical, realistic, and a practical lens. This is about conquest. This isn't about whether I like you or don't like you. Don't worry about Buford. Don't worry about Buford who's saying he don't like colored folk. This is about conquest. This is about the acquisition of land, power, wealth, and resources. Nothing more, nothing less. Anything else is distracting you from what is really happening. So let's get our emotions out the way and understand why it's paramount for us to have paradigm shifts and build for ourselves so we can become competitive to fight for what's ours and not continue to be oppressed and stepped on. So the 10 principles to guide Black churches. So action step number 1, incorporate a new focus around Blacks, the original people. With the exception of Black people, all races of mankind claim and practice their own religion. Other population groups enjoy the decided advantage of ascribing to religious philosophies, doctrines, and cultures that link them in a positive way to an omnipotent being. Black people suffer the double disadvantage of having been given various religions such as Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and Hinduism, then subsequently relegated and perceived as the guest worshippers in the religion. This should never have happened. Black people hold a special place in biblical history, and we missed the boat when failing to claim that special place. It is difficult, if not possible, to be respected and appreciated when religions of which you are a part teach Black inferiority and condemnation. Now is the time for Black churches in America to use their spiritual and cultural inheritance to promote the interests of Black Americans. Black ministers can use our spiritual history and reclaim our rightful place as the first humans on earth. Just as Jewish people claim to be the chosen people and American Indians claim to be Native Americans, Black people can lay claim to being both religiously and biologically the first humans or the original people on earth. So the focus being around our Blackness, and he's saying Black people need to be uplifted and focused around. We are Black people and we are the original people on earth, and we have a purpose and a place here on earth. That's why we are the original people. We are the original people because we have a purpose and a place here on earth. We were not put here just to be laborers, just to be slaves to whites, Asians, or any other groups of people who have enslaved Africans throughout history, right? That is not our place to be workers and servants. That is not our place. Reclaim our greatness. It's the chant is what we should be championing. It's the chant. Reclaiming our greatness, reclaiming our place here on earth, reclaiming our humanity. Before we can be kings and gods, we need to be humans. We have to reclaim our humanity. If we don't reclaim our humanity, all other stuff we just talking. We got to change our minds. Switch off the slave mind, breaking the chains of psychological slavery. Switch off the slave mind. Having a paradigm shift to a mind of liberation. Education without application or resources is just a waste of time, and it leads to masturbation. You're just feeling yourself. Education needs to lead to action. Inspiration, motivation, all those things need to lead to action. We get too caught up in talking and feeling good. It should lead to action. So, action step number 2. Develop and instill a group code of conduct. I talk about this all the time. For the sake of group stability and functionality, every group of society should have an organization whose primary responsibility is the promotion of its social cohesiveness, values, norms, conformity, and way of life. Black churches in aggregate are the logical institution to assume the responsibility to develop and instill a code of conduct in Black America. This group code of conduct should be based on 2 assumptions, which can be taught by Black churches. First, to overcome white Willie Lynchism and build unity. Black churches should teach their ministers that God has assigned them to a skin color team. You Black, and that's your team, whether you like it or not. And when the team loses, everyone on the team will lose, regardless of their education, income, or social status. Second, churches can teach Blacks to love and support the group to which they belong and never treat other people better than they treat their own people. Such group commitments would lay a solid foundation of acceptable behavior upon which Blacks can begin to empower ourselves through group economics and group politics. White America and other ethnic groups have a code of conduct that defines the role and place of Black people. Without our own code of conduct that teaches us how to support, love, and care for members of our own group, we would have no recourse but to continue to accept the majority's code of conduct, which is not in our best interest. The majority society's code of conduct accommodates its needs. It is based on European beliefs and values, especially in white culture, superiority, and individualism. The code of conduct advantages them, while our lack of a code of conduct disadvantages us. Their religious institutions help promulgate and enforce codes of behavior. As we build communities or churches, our churches are the most appropriate institutions to develop a code of conduct specific to our race and our communities. The code of conduct should require us to fully respect and support one another for common goals of the race. With the code of conduct, we have a way to judge when we are working against our own best interests. This is especially true in regards to inappropriate behavior patterns. The Black churches are the ideal institutions to develop and promulgate standards of behavior. They are in contact with a great number of Black Americans, and for the first time, we could have an orchestrated effort to recondition our behavior and teach us how we should interact with other members of our primary group and communities. Now, we talk about code of conduct so much. We talk about code of conduct so much on this channel. We even showed you the code of conduct that we created for ourselves that are on www.thepactsinc.org, www.thepacts.org, thepacts.org. Code of conduct that we created. The code is the foundation of everything of a group of people. It helps shape and mold the way the society will be run, the way society will exist. Will it get better? Will it get worse? Look at how we are operating now. Look at how we behave now with no code of conduct, or as Dr. Anderson says, operating off the code of conduct of your oppressors. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but if we keep not having a code, we're going to keep getting worse. Action step number 3, build a Black alliance across religious denominations. It is self-defeating shades of Willie Lynchism for Blacks to build self-contained economic and political bases that do not transcend church property lines or denominational lines. Black ministers should remember that Black people were not enslaved and segregated because of their religious denominations or because of the church they attended. They were subordinated and exploited because of their group skin color. Therefore, any efforts to aid Black people should place skin color before religious denomination. Black religious organizations that subscribe to Powernomics goals of self-sufficient and competitive Black community should form together into a national network or alliance. Black people have lost their historical religious identity and are scattered across nearly every religious denomination or sect. Black people's original religion was ancestral worship. Black people's original religion was ancestral worship, just as in the Asian and Egyptian societies. All other religious denominations were given to Black people by white masters or overseers. The goal of the alliance should be group unity in dealing with racial problems, even while there are differences in religious thought. So this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, even the last couple of weeks. Black people, we are too Christian. We're too caught up in Christianity. One of the biggest problems is we're Christian before we're Black. We're religious before we're Black. We're Islamic before we're Black. And as he said, we were never admonished. We were never put down. We were never enslaved. We were never stepped on. We were never oppressed because of our religion. It was because we were African people and we were vulnerable. And you had enough African people willing to play the game. But this is a race game. It is about our team against your team. Religion should not be something primary. I even believe that in building families. I even believe that in building families. We have a lot of people in our community who, if you don't practice the same religion with them, they feel like they can't build families with you. As dire a situation as Black America is in, you can meet a person who's a great person, who's the person you need, the person who check off all your boxes and more, who can show you that they're a person that you need. But because the religion is different, you won't mess with that person because you think that they're uneven yoked because the religion is different. We could try to build it off of Christianity if we want to. But Christianity right now, the way it's given to us, is separating us and hurting us more than it is helping us. I don't have to believe what you believe. My journey is my journey. But what type of person am I? My religion should be helping me to become the best version of myself, the best quality person. If I'm a great quality Black person, I put my race first. I improve myself. I'm the best I can be, and I give back to my community, and I help my community become the best it could be. Well, it doesn't matter what I worship. Obviously I'm worshiping something good if these are my results, if these are my actions. Obviously, my religious views are positive. My religious views are helping me if these are my outcomes. Start thinking like that. Hope I'm not talking to a wall. So action step number 4, teach Black economic prosperity. Since Black ministers have long held a monopoly on Black American spirituality, they should be used to economically enhance the quality of life for an impoverished Black America. Black churches have a long history of abetting and conditioning of Blacks to believe that there is something vicious, that there is something virtuous and noble about being poor, downtrodden, or the impoverished underdog. Biblical scriptures condemn the love of money. It does not condemn money. When Jews began migrating to the country in the latter part of the 19th century, nearly all of them were poor and impoverished. Their synagogues became the sources of group unity. When Jewish children were young, the synagogues and the families taught the value of seeking out and buying from those in their own group. The synagogues taught their families the importance of gaining wealth, religious tithing, understanding and practicing capitalism, building Jewish-owned and controlled schools, supporting the family and community, and using wealth to protect their households. Today, as a group, Jews are wealthy and politically powerful. Through preaching and teaching, churches should establish a value within their prospective congregations for a moral obligation to acquire sufficient wealth and power to support our families, our churches, our race, and ourselves. The parable of the master and the slave in Matthew 25:14 is instructive. The scripture tells the story of a master who gave each of his 3 slaves a different amount of money before going on a journey. He instructed them to protect his money. When he returned from his trip, he called each slave to report how well he had done with his money. The first 2 slaves reported they had sizably increased the original amount they had been given. The third slave, however, reported that out of fear, he had buried his money and failed to produce a profit. Master was furious. He took back what he had given that slave and cast him out. The reason for Black America is the lesson for Black America is that Blacks should take whatever money or wealth they have been given by God and increase it. If we are to follow biblical responsibility, we must have wealth. Churches can teach a biblical view of wealth, and it must be used to do what God intended. Now, I remember growing up having series of conversations with people on various occasions, various different people about money. People with the mindset, like Dr. Anderson was talking about, of wealth is bad, money is bad. It's noble to be poor. It's godly to be poor. You should be poor. Poor humbles you. Poor allows you to see the world. That's dumb. That was given to us by the slave masters. That viewpoint was given to us by the slave masters. That perspective, right? You want a group of people who you are enslaving to internalize poverty. Poverty has to be internalized, right? A group of people have to think that they could do no better for poverty to sit and fester. If you don't have an impoverished mindset, you don't have to continue to be impoverished. But if you believe that money is not a tool, because we have to think about it. Money is a tool. Money is energy that we could use to empower ourselves and uplift ourselves and make things better for ourselves. Use the money. Don't let the money use you. Right? The love of money is the root of all evil, not the utilization of money. The love of money is the root of all evil, not the utilization of money. Okay, so I'm gonna give it to you like this. Excuse my language. I'm gonna give it to you like this. So in certain classes that I teach, especially when I'm talking to men, and we're talking about the relationship between man, woman, and their money. Think about it like this. You should think about money like this. You are a pimp and money is your bitch. And money's job is to go out and bring back more monies, aka more bitches. Right? Think about it like that. That's the analogy. You use money as a tool to help you bring back more money, to empower yourself, to acquire land resources, which will help you acquire power, which will in turn increase your wealth. Never think that being poor is okay. Never think that having that going without is okay. We were put here to live in abundance, and it's time to get out. So action step number 5, operate the church as an educational and instructional center. So Black churches can serve as community centers for health services, employment opportunities, leadership, and business trainings, especially for a growing Black underclass who feel abandoned and confused about its role in today's America. Churches should ally with the families and schools to share this local burden. This burden falls primarily on the shoulders of the church because nearly all other institutions within Black neighborhoods are dysfunctional, and various levels of government have disavowed any responsibility to aid this segment of the Black community. And I will say, a good number of churches are also highly, highly dysfunctional. It should be helpful. It would be helpful if all Black churches would teach to align rather than preach to excite. All too often, our Black congregates go to simply get excited and to walk away feeling good. Most Blacks need more in their daily lives. They need to be knowledgeable of the skills that will allow them to negotiate the economic and political world outside of the church. Churches could develop educational programs to educate Black youth and adults by teaching them economic principles and capitalism from the pulpit and in Sunday schools. Black churches should be taught the nature of a capitalistic democracy and the role of group economics. Churches can do this in the context of their dogma. In the early years, children ought to be trained to support their own people first. They should see those principles in operation in church activities. Teaching these values to Black children is not teaching them to dislike any other group. The issue is who Black people are for and who they are not against, right? Once these principles are taught in the nursery schools, they should follow through high schools, independent and religious school policies, or special trade or apprentice programs that complement the regular public schools. A supportive group spirit of unity must be instilled in Black children in the early years. As they grow, they'll know how to respect themselves and each other, and how to stay in their communities to seek out businesses for goods and services. So, um, that once again, that comes with a paradigm shift. The churches being able to see themselves as resource hubs, churches being able to see themselves as educational and instructional institutions. Sunday service becomes more than just a feel-good session or a concert. Sunday service can have some worship, some knowledge, some education, some resource serving, some resource sharing. Sunday service could be going out into the community and helping people and giving back. That could be your service. It doesn't always have to be you in there screaming and shouting to the sky, to the sky daddy. I'm just saying, what results do you want? You want to continue results of nothing? Or do we want some kind of forward movement? I mean, it's on us to make the choice of how we want to actually exist as Black people in America. At this point, nobody's making us do it. Action step number 6, use the church to attract and hold wealth. Black communities have long suffered a scarcity of wealth and income-producing resources needed to be competitive. We are getting beaten first by competitors who impede wealth and income from entering Black communities, and also by internal agents who abet the fight of wealth and income resources out of Black communities. Black America has not had a benefactor out of Black communities. Black America has not had a benefactor with the potential to reverse the outflow of resources from Black communities. Black churches, however, have the potential power to stop the capital drain from the Black communities. Black ministers and their respective churches have enormous socioeconomic potential for power because they can attract and hold wealth. Black America reportedly has $500 billion in annual disposable income. To understand the power of that statistic, imagine the capabilities Black religious organizations would have if just 10% of that money, approximately 50 billion, were given to churches and in one lump sum payment, right? Even though it is not a lump sum payment, that is in fact what Black churches take in annually. This amount of money represents 3 times the gross receipts of Black America's nearly 500,000 businesses. Of this 500 billion in tithes and other contributions were kept within the Black community and made to pass through the hands of 8 to 12 Blacks, it would nearly equate to the total annual disposable income of Black America. Money of this magnitude could easily foster economic growth if Black churches conducted the majority of their businesses with Black companies. Today, unfortunately, that is not the case. Nearly 99% of money spent by Black churches passes into the white community through mortgage payments, insurance premiums, printing expenses, maintenance, utilities, and so forth. Nearly every collected penny is deposited into a white bank. Once a church pays off a mortgage, a new building fund is usually initiated to construct or purchase another building as the church tracks white flight into the suburbs. Basically, money needs to be managed better. Our relationship with money needs to be better within the Black church. The Black church can become an economic hub if money is managed better within the church. If money is understood better, if money is looked at, that's better. Hell, financial education, financial literacy is taught. Since COVID, there's been a push for financial literacy, but the numbers show that we ain't really studying and we ain't really learning. So action step number 7, establish church-based lending programs. Every Monday morning, Black churches typically deposit approximately $1 billion into white-owned banks across America. In most instances, these are the very same banks from which Black people, as well as Black churches and Black businesses, have a difficult time securing loans. These deposits represent 3 times the amount of money produced and deposited by Black businesses and Black or white banks. Churches could establish banks, savings and loans, credit unions, or loan funds designated to provide businesses and personal loans to Black businesses. This would provide capital pools for our aspiring business people, while the church-owned lending entities profit from the interest and fees on the loans. Black churches are needed also as key players in the institutionalization of Black communities. They should participate in and help administer the Black Business Investment Corporations proposed in Chapter 6. The proposed BBICs could be direct links between the developing industries, related supportive businesses, and the Black communities. The Black churches could benefit by being involved in the leadership and also could profit from the interest paid on loans to a large number of Black businesses within the vertically integrated industries. Churches would be members along with other key groups such as traditional lenders, civic organizations, business executives, academics, elected officials, and investment club representatives. Smaller church-sponsored capital pools could also be created. Church investment clubs, for instance, could also function as alternative sources for business finance. Smaller churches should be encouraged to join in and pool their lending capital together with larger religious institutions. So, hell, ain't nobody else gonna do it for us, right? So, put our money together and use our money to help each other, empower each other. Yeah, that's it. Action step number 8, provide social and community services. Well, this is a no-brainer, but okay. God commanded his followers to take care of the poor, not to become the poor. In America, Blacks are disproportionately poor. That being Black is almost synonymous with being poor. Even as the entire Black community begins to lift up, those who are economically and socially depressed will need increased social services from Black churches. If a Black minister builds the biggest church in the world with the largest congregation, it contributes nothing if the church does not render social and community services to Black people. It is important that Black churches expand their ministries into the communities and engage in projects that lighten some of the suffering of all Black Americans. Yes, yes, yes. Social programs with social workers, with case managers and social workers. Social programs with case managers and social workers. It is imperative for us to fix the issues within our communities. And we fix those issues through social programs and through social work and community work. Those who have access to resources should be in the communities, helping to make the communities better. Choose a lane, pick an area of activity, and go to work. Mine is education and sex. Those are the areas of activity, specifically in the areas of activity, Black history and Black psychology, as well as safe sex and HIV/AIDS and STD prevention, right? Those are the lanes that I teach. Those are my passions. Those are my jobs. Those are my professions. That's what I do professionally as a Black person here. I'm a historian. I talk about Black history. I talk about Black psychology. I literally have a degree in Black psychology from Florida A&M University. I've been studying Black history and Black psychology for the past 20 years. Been able to teach it for the last 14 years. Find your lane. Do your thing. Give back to the community. But in this case, he's talking about the churches. Those of you in the churches, those of you who make up the church, what are your skill sets? What can you use to give back to the community? How can you contribute to the social services or the social, the different ways that the church can be viable to the community? How can you contribute to that? The church has to become relevant once again in Black America, because that's how we were structured, unless we restructure ourselves. But as of now, from what Dr. Anderson is saying, from his viewpoint, Black church needs to be restructured. So action step number 9, establish a network of protective obligations. Based upon the historical treatment of Black people in this country and around the world, Black Americans need a national organization or network of secret societies whose sole purpose would be to protect Black people from physical and political economic abuse. The need for such organizations are included under religion because the majority of society's organizations, whether the KKK, the Knights of the Camellia, Black Horse Brigade, or simply the ultra-right wing moral minority, all had direct church links. They all laid claims to some religious dogma to justify the society's commitments to protecting their people and the way of life. On the government side, the majority of society uses agencies such as the FBI to maintain the status quo for the power elite. As an outside group in the current status quo, Blacks need to establish organizations similar to those established by Jews, such as the American Jewish Congress. The mission of this organization is one, to safeguard the welfare and security of Jews in the United States, Israel, and throughout the world. 2, to strengthen the basic principles of pluralism and the best defense against anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry. And 3, to enhance the quality of American Jewish life. Note that these organizations are very specific about who they are supporting and protecting. They say nothing about all the denominations or minority religions. Unlike Black civil rights organizations, Jewish organizations make no pretense about their priority for their own group. Shoot, if we don't look out for us, who's going to look out for us? If we don't prioritize ourselves, who will prioritize ourselves? Who will prioritize us? We've gotten to the point to where Black people, especially, like I said earlier in the video, a number of Black ministers, a number of Black clergymen, a number of Black religious leaders are afraid to be Black. They are afraid to talk Black. They are afraid to promote Black, but they are afraid to make Blackness or helping Black people their focus. They are afraid to say, I'm here to gather money, power, information, and resources to go back and help my community, my people. I'm vocal about that. I am here to gather resources, information, and everything I can to go back and help my community and the people that look like me and the people who are in my community. I'm helping Black people. I'm helping my people. We need all the help we can get. Why can't I help my people? Matter of fact, I don't care what you think about me helping my people. But that's what I'm here to do. Of course, everybody don't think like that, and everybody don't get down like that. But it's on us to continue to follow those who we call leaders. It's on us to put those people in those positions. If the people who we call leaders are not leading us in the right way, stop following. The conclusion is churches in America helped to establish a foundation that supported slavery. Black churches were established to keep blacks pacified and under control. But like those early independent ministers who used their churches to help their people escape slavery, Powernomics calls on these religious organizations to be agents of change to empower Black America today. Many religions are represented in Black communities, and there is a role for all of them. Powernomics does not ask that religious differences be set aside and asks instead that we work together on common ground to establish and strengthen communities. In doing so, we strengthen ourselves and the Black religious organizations to which we belong. And I should have said this in the beginning, but he was using the word Black church to represent all Black religious and spiritual institutions. So it wasn't just the Christians, it was all Black religious and spiritual institutions. So that concludes chapter 8 of Powernomics, and actually concludes our reading and review of Powernomics. Chapter 8, a new expanded role for churches, pages 223 to 224. And after that, there's the epilogue and then an appendix and a bunch of other information in the book. Powernomics, get your copy. The link is in the description. If you don't have your copy, get your copy. I enjoy Powernomics. I don't know about y'all. I like Powernomics. I remember when I first began reading the compensatory code. I don't know who the person was, but somebody made a comment that because I was talking about how some of the things that Neely Fuller was saying connected with some of the things that Claude Anderson had said that I've heard him talk about in lectures. I had yet to read the book, so admittedly, it's my first time being able, getting around to reading the book. So somebody was saying basically that Powernomics and compensatory code contradicts themselves. So I might as well stop reading the compensatory code and jump straight to Powernomics. So after reading Powernomics for myself, I vehemently disagreed with that person that made that comment. And it strengthens even more my argument of how Powernomics is connected to the compensatory code, which we showed you the other day in our Friday breakdown that both are connected to the miseducation of the Negro. Like we keep saying, man, all these are pieces to the puzzle. That's why we're going to keep reading these books. And we're going to keep reviewing these books, and we're going to keep breaking this stuff down. So from here, it is on us to pick the next book that we read. And so I will, in the community tab, make sure you check the community tab so you can go vote on the book that you think we should read coming up. And, in the comments, put some ideas of books that you think that should be in the selection. And then, next, by the polls will stop like Saturday. And then I get to read and I drop that chapter 1 on y'all on Monday. But Powernomics, I enjoyed it. Dr. Claude Anderson did an incredible job with this book. Gives us things that we can do, things that we can actually do for ourselves to help ourselves. Action plans, action steps. It's not just talking, it's not just rhetoric, it's action plans and things that people can take. So I enjoy the book. I recommend everybody who's Black read this book. This is one piece of the puzzle. This is not the answer. It's a part of the answer. So read it and understand its place and utilize the information. Don't just sit on it. Don't just masturbate. Utilize the information. So on the Shoulders of Giants, man, that's what we do. I'm hyped and I'm ready for this next book, man. This is how we start the week off right. You heard? So hey, you see the website at the bottom of the page, the bottom of the screen. Make sure you support. All the links to support me is in the description. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. Hey, I want to see these likes up. Let's get these likes up. Let's get these likes up. All right. Let's get these likes up. Make sure you comment, sensible comments. Make sure you comment what books you think we should read next. If you're commenting on a specific thing, make sure you tell me exactly what you comment on to put a timestamp so I know what you're talking about. Once again, though, I love you all. Appreciate everybody's support. Everybody who's supporting on the Shoulders of Giants, I appreciate y'all. So, yeah, let's keep doing this, man. Catch y'all next time.